The city looked like a circuit board from Eleanor Vance's 40th floor office, a cold lattice of light and logic. Inside, the world was even colder. Glass walls, a chrome and obsidian desk, a single severe orchid. Each element was a testament to a life curated to eliminate mess. At 34, Eleanor was the CEO of Vance Innovations, a fortress she had built from the rubble of a past betrayal. Her success was a weapon, her isolation a shield. She trusted spreadsheets more than people, and the silent hum of the server room was more comforting than any conversation. Tonight, the hum was broken. A soft scraping sound drew her gaze from the quarterly projections. A small girl, no older than 7, was standing by the far wall, her fingers tracing the grout lines between the massive marble tiles. She wore a pink coat over pajamas printed with tiny astronauts, and her hair was pulled into 2 neat puffs. Eleanor's heart gave a strange, unfamiliar lurch. Children were not a variable she ever encountered in this sterile ecosystem. Before she could form a question, a man appeared in the doorway, his eyes wide with panic. He wore the simple gray uniform of the building's maintenance staff. "Maya, I told you to stay put. I am so sorry, ma'am. So sorry. She's quick." Eleanor stood, her posture rigid. "This is a restricted floor." The man, whose name tag read Marcus Thorne, nodded, his face a mixture of embarrassment and paternal fear. He gently took the little girl's hand. "I know. My sitter canceled last minute. It won't happen again." He started to lead the child away, but she stopped, her wide, dark eyes fixed on something on Eleanor's desk. It was a model, an intricate architectural design of a community center she'd designed in college. It was her one concession to sentimentality, a reminder of a time before she believed dreams were merely liabilities. One of its delicate spires was broken, snapped clean off during a move years ago. The little girl, Maya, pointed a small finger at the broken piece. She looked up at her father, then back at Eleanor, a silent question in her gaze. "It's broken," Eleanor said, the words sounding hollow in the vast office. Marcus's eyes softened as he looked from his daughter to the model. Sometimes things just need a patient hand to be made whole again. He gave Eleanor a small, apologetic smile before guiding his daughter out of the room, leaving behind a silence that felt different now, not peaceful, but empty. A week passed. Eleanor told herself to forget the janitor and his quiet daughter, but the image of the girl pointing at the broken model remained. She found herself working later, the logic of her own behavior fraying at the edges. She was waiting, she realized with a jolt of annoyance, hoping for another intrusion. It came on a Tuesday. The rain was lashing against the floor-to-ceiling windows, blurring the city, lights into a watercolor wash. She heard the familiar distant hum of the floor polisher, and then a soft knock on her open office door. It was Marcus. "Ms. Vance," he said, holding his cap in his hands. "I apologize for bothering you again. Maya, well, she made this for you." He held out a piece of construction paper. On it was a crayon drawing of her office. A stick figure with severe black hair stood at a desk, but instead of a frown, the figure was smiling. And on the desk, the model of the building was whole, the broken spire drawn back in place with a bright yellow crayon, shining like a star. Eleanor took the drawing, her fingers tracing the waxy lines. It was the most human thing that had entered her office in years. "Thank you," she said, her voice softer than she intended. "Her name is Maya?" Marcus nodded, a proud smile touching his lips. "Maya, she doesn't talk much. Not since her mom passed, but she sees everything." He hesitated, then seemed to gather his courage. "I noticed that model on your desk, the one she liked. I used to work with things like that. Miniatures, clockwork, small, detailed things. If you'd let me, I could try to repair it for you." The offer was so unexpected, so genuinely kind, it disarmed her. The old Eleanor, the one forged in the fires of betrayal, would have dismissed him instantly. A janitor offering to touch her things? Preposterous. But the offer wasn't about status. It was about fixing something broken. "You do that?" she asked. "It's what I do," he said simply. "Or what I used to do. It would be my pleasure." She found herself agreeing. He promised to bring his tools the next evening, and as he left, Eleanor tacked the childish drawing to the sterile bulletin board behind her desk. It looked absurdly out of place. and utterly perfect. For the first time in a long time, the rain outside didn't seem to match the storm inside her. It was just rain. The following night, Marcus returned not with a bucket and mop, but with a small, worn leather case. He unrolled it on a cleared corner of Eleanor's desk, revealing a set of delicate, specialized tools, tiny files, tweezers, clamps, and small pots of adhesive. Maya was with him, sitting quietly on the floor with her sketchbook, a silent, serious supervisor. "My wife, Sarah, she always said my hands were meant for smaller worlds," Marcus began, his voice low as he carefully examined the broken model. He didn't look at Eleanor, but at the delicate work before him. "I had a little shop. I restored antique clocks, music boxes, heirlooms, things that carried people's stories." Eleanor watched, fascinated as he worked. His hands, which she'd only ever seen pushing a broom, were steady and precise. He was an artist. "What happened to the shop?" she asked, her curiosity overriding her usual reserve. He sighed, a sound heavy with a history she couldn't imagine. "When Sarah got sick, the treatments, they were expensive. The shop didn't make enough. I needed a steady paycheck, good insurance, so I sold my tools, sold the lease, and took a job with the city. This job came up after she was gone. It's quiet. The hours let me be there for Maya during the day. It's stable." He paused, holding the tiny broken spire with a pair of tweezers. "After Sarah died, Maya just stopped talking. The doctor said it was trauma, that she'd speak when she felt safe again. So my whole world became about making things safe for her. No risks, no big dreams, just quiet stability." He finally looked up at Eleanor, his eyes clear and profound. "You build a fortress for your kid, you know? But sometimes I worry I've built myself a prison, too." The confession hung in the air between them, raw and honest. Eleanor felt a crack form in her own fortress. Here was a man who had sacrificed his passion, his art, for love, for family. She had sacrificed everything for success, and all it had brought her was a bigger, emptier room. "I'm sorry," she said, the words inadequate. "About your wife." He gave a sad smile. "Thank you. She was like sunshine. She would have loved Maya's drawing of you smiling." He carefully applied a micro bead of adhesive to the spire and, with a surgeon's precision, set it back in its place. He held it for a moment, his brow furrowed in concentration. There, good as new. He was right. The seam was nearly invisible. The little building was whole again. A symbol. Eleanor knew it was a symbol, and the obviousness of it didn't make it any less powerful. A broken thing, made whole by a patient, gentle hand. That night marked a shift. Their late-night encounters became a quiet routine. While Marcus performed his duties, Maya would sit in Eleanor's office drawing. Sometimes Eleanor would read to her from a book of fairy tales she'd bought on a whim. The words felt strange in her mouth, but Maya's rapt attention made them feel important. Marcus would often join them on his break, bringing 2 cups of surprisingly good coffee from the staff machine. They talked. Not about business or quarterly reports, but about little things. Marcus's favorite kind of music. The funny thing Maya did at the park. Eleanor found herself sharing things she hadn't spoken of in years. Her childhood dream of being an architect, her love for a specific park bench in the city, her grandmother's recipe for lemon cake. Her world, once a monochrome of black, white, and gray, was slowly being colored in. The stark lines of her life were softening. She laughed more. She left the office before 10 p.m. One afternoon, she found herself staring at a display of children's coats, wondering if Maya had one warm enough for the coming winter. The thought was so domestic, so deeply unlike her, that it almost frightened her. This burgeoning warmth, however, was about to be met with a polar vortex. His name was Richard Sterling. Sterling, the CEO of Omnicorp, was everything Eleanor's ex-fiancé had been, charming on the surface, with the soul of a shark. He had been circling Vance Innovations for months, proposing a merger. It was a hostile takeover, dressed in a tuxedo. The deal promised to make Eleanor personally wealthier than she could imagine, catapulting her into a new stratosphere of corporate power. It was the ultimate revenge on her past, the final glittering trophy. And it required her to become a person she was no longer sure she wanted to be. The deal involved synergies and streamlining, euphemisms for firing half her staff and outsourcing the rest, including the maintenance and janitorial contracts. People like Marcus would be the first to go. The old Eleanor would have called it a necessary cost of business. The new Eleanor felt sick. One evening, Richard arrived at her office unannounced, oozing expensive cologne and predatory confidence. "Eleanor, darling, burning the midnight oil, as usual. That's my girl." He didn't see Marcus quietly emptying the trash by the door, or Maya asleep on the plush visitor's couch, a half-finished drawing of a garden clutched in her hand. "Richard," Eleanor said, her voice flat, "this wasn't on my schedule. Spontaneity, my dear, it's the spice of life, and of business." He strode over to her desk, his eyes gleaming. "The final papers are ready. We sign on Friday. A public ceremony. We'll be the king and queen of the tech world." He leaned in, his voice a conspiratorial whisper. "Our first act? Cleaning house. Getting rid of all the dead weight." His gaze flickered dismissively towards Marcus. "Starting with the little people." Marcus froze, his back to them. Eleanor's blood ran cold. The cruelty was so casual, so absolute. It was the voice of her own past ambition, and she hated it. She looked from Richard's smug face to Marcus's rigid shoulders, and then to Maya, sleeping the innocent sleep of a child who deserved a safe world. After Richard left, a toxic silence filled the room. Marcus finished his work without a word, his movements stiff. The easy camaraderie they had built over the past few weeks felt like a fragile piece of glass that had just been shattered. When he was done, he stood at her door. "So, that's it then," he said, his voice devoid of emotion. "He's what you want." It wasn't a question. "Marcus, it's not that simple," Eleanor began. "Isn't it?" He finally turned to face her, and the quiet resignation in his eyes was more painful than any accusation. "I get it, Ms. Vance. I'm just the janitor. I'm part of the dead weight. I thought you were different." He didn't know her history. He didn't know the ghost she was fighting. "Marcus, please, let me explain." She told him everything then. About her first company, built with her ex-fiancé, David. About how he had systematically pushed her out, stolen her code, and then sold the company for millions, leaving her with nothing. She told him how she had clawed her way back, fueled by bitterness and the single-minded goal of becoming so powerful that no one could ever hurt her like that again. The merger with Richard wasn't just a business deal. It was the final move in a decade-long chess game against a ghost. "Winning was the only thing that mattered," she finished, her voice barely a whisper. "Proving I was better than him. Stronger. It's all I've known for 10 years. Marcus listened, his expression softening from disappointment to a deep, sorrowful understanding. He walked over to the couch and gently pulled a blanket over his sleeping daughter. "I understand wanting to protect yourself," he said, his voice low and full of a weary wisdom. "Believe me, I do. But look at what you're protecting. An empty office, a view of a city that doesn't know your name. You're not just building a fortress against the bad guys, Eleanor. You're locking yourself in and keeping all the good things out." He gestured around the room. "This isn't a life. It's a balance sheet. That man, Sterling, he's not your victory. He's your past, come back to offer you a fancier prison cell. Is that really the win you want?" His words hit her with the force of a physical blow, because they were true. For weeks he and Maya had been showing her a different way to live, a life built not on assets and acquisitions, but on small moments of connection, on kindness, on fixing what was broken instead of throwing it away. She was on the verge of throwing all of that away for a victory that would feel as hollow as her office. The next 2 days were a blur of meetings and frantic preparations for the signing ceremony. Richard was a constant presence, a smug shadow at her side, talking about their future, their power. He was a perfect mirror of David, and Eleanor felt a growing sense of dread. Every smile he gave her felt like a cage closing. She avoided the late-night hours, unable to face Marcus. She missed the quiet peace of Maya's presence, the simple comfort of their shared coffee. The office felt colder than ever, her victory a pile of ashes before it was even won. She would stare at the little restored model on her desk, a beacon of a different path, a choice she was too cowardly to take. The day of the signing arrived, gray and overcast. The ceremony was to be held in the main atrium of the Vance Innovations building, a grand three-story space of glass and steel. A stage had been erected, a podium set up, and rows of chairs filled with board members, investors, and the press. It was the culmination of her life's work, her public coronation. Eleanor stood backstage, her stomach in knots. Her custom-tailored suit felt like a straitjacket. Richard was schmoozing with a reporter, laughing a laugh that grated on her nerves. She saw her reflection in a pane of glass. A powerful, successful woman. A complete stranger. As the event was about to begin, she noticed the maintenance crew doing a final sweep of the area. Among them was Marcus. Their eyes met across the crowded room. There was no anger in his gaze, only a profound sadness that broke her heart. He was holding Maya's hand. She wasn't supposed to be there, but Eleanor guessed he couldn't find a sitter, or perhaps he just couldn't bear to be alone. Maya was holding her sketchbook, her small face anxious. And now, the moment we've all been waiting for, the MC boomed. The signing of the merger that will reshape the future of technology. Please welcome to the stage, Richard Sterling and Eleanor Vance. Applause thundered through the atrium. Eleanor walked onto the stage, her legs feeling like lead. She sat at the heavy mahogany table, the contracts spread out before her. A dozen cameras flashed, capturing the moment for the morning business section. Richard gave a smarmy speech about synergy and progress, then slid the contract and a heavy gold-plated pen in front of her. "Your kingdom awaits, my queen," he whispered, his breath smelling of mint and corruption. Eleanor picked up the pen. This was it. The end of the game. Victory. She looked out at the crowd, at the faceless investors and reporters. Her gaze scanned the room until it found him. Marcus. He was standing near the back by a large potted ficus, trying to be invisible. He was watching her, his face a mask of quiet dignity. As her pen hovered over the signature line, a commotion started near the back. A board member was having a heated, whispered conversation on his phone. He looked pale. He hung up and rushed over to another board member, showing him something on the screen. A low murmur rippled through the front rows. Richard shot them a venomous glare. Just then, Marcus, who had overheard a snippet of a panicked phone call from one of Richard's aides, saw the final piece fall into place. He saw the numbers on a leaked document, the cold calculation of human lives. He saw it wasn't just about his job, it was about entire communities being dismantled. And in that moment, his quiet stability didn't matter as much as doing what was right. The pen touched the paper. "Don't sign that contract, Ms. Vance." The voice, clear and strong, echoed through the suddenly silent atrium. Every head turned. Marcus Thorne, the janitor, had pushed his way to the front of the crowd, his face etched with a desperate resolve. Security guards started to move toward him, but he didn't falter. "Richard, get this man out of here," Eleanor hissed, her mind reeling, but her words lacked conviction. "That contract isn't a merger, it's a liquidation," Marcus shouted, his voice ringing with the clarity of truth. "He's not merging with you. He's stripping your company for parts. He's going to fire everyone, sell your patents, and leave you with the shell. I heard his team talking. It's all there in the fine print of the offshore holding clauses." Chaos erupted. Reporters surged forward, cameras flashing wildly. Richard's face had turned a blotchy red. "Security, remove him. He's a disgruntled employee. He's delusional." But Eleanor wasn't looking at Richard. She was looking at Marcus. And she knew, with a certainty that settled deep in her bones, that he was telling the truth. The whispers among the board members, their panicked faces, it all clicked into place. Richard wasn't offering her a partnership. He was her ex-fiancé all over again, serving her the same poison in a more expensive bottle. He was using her life's work as a stepping stone, and he was going to destroy thousands of lives, including hers, in the process. She looked down at the contract, at the space for her signature, still clean. Then she looked past Marcus and saw Maya. The little girl had slipped through the crowd and was standing a few feet away. She wasn't scared. She was holding up her sketchbook. On the page was a new drawing. It was of two stick figures, a man and a woman, holding the hand of a smaller figure between them. They were standing in front of a small house with a big garden. Above them, the sun was shining. It was a picture of a future of warmth, of connection, a future worth fighting for. Eleanor Vance stood up. The gold pen fell from her hand and clattered onto the table. She looked directly at Richard Sterling, her voice cold and clear, amplified by the podium microphone for the entire world to hear. "This deal is off." She turned to the stunned crowd of reporters. "It has come to my attention that Omnicorp's proposal is not a merger, but a hostile asset seizure, predicated on fraudulent projections and bad faith. Vance Innovations will be opening an internal investigation, and we will be cooperating fully with the SEC. "Mr. Sterling," she said, turning back to him with a look of pure ice, "get out of my building." The aftermath was immediate and explosive. Richard Sterling's corporate empire, built on a mountain of debt and deception, crumbled within weeks under the weight of SEC investigations and public scandal. He was ruined. Eleanor, however, was celebrated. Hailed as a corporate hero who stood up for her employees, she became a media darling, a symbol of a new, more ethical form of capitalism. Her board, seeing the immense positive publicity, rallied behind her. Vance Innovations became more successful than ever, not because it was ruthless, but because it was resilient and, now, respected. But none of that mattered to Eleanor as much as the quiet conversation she had in the atrium after the crowds had dispersed and the news vans had driven away. She found Marcus and Maya by the large fountain. "You saved me," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Not the company. Me." Marcus just smiled. "I told you. Sometimes things just need a patient hand to be made whole again." And then the true miracle happened. Maya, who hadn't spoken a word in 3 years, stepped forward and gently took Eleanor's hand. She looked up at her, her eyes shining. "Ellie," she said, the single word as clear and bright as a bell. "Home." She pointed from Eleanor to her father and back again, a small, perfect circle. Tears streamed down Eleanor's face, tears not of sorrow or anger, but of a joy so profound it felt like she was breathing for the first time. She knelt and wrapped the little girl in a hug, her fortress walls crashing down into dust, replaced by the warmth of a small body clinging to hers. When she looked up, Marcus was crying too. 1 year later, the sun streamed through the large bay window of a cozy, book-filled living room. It wasn't a penthouse, it was a house, with a slightly overgrown garden out back that was a work in progress. On a beautiful restored oak mantelpiece sat an intricate architectural model of a community center, its spire whole and gleaming. Eleanor sat on the floor, helping a chattering, giggling Maya build a tower of colorful blocks. She was wearing jeans and a soft sweater, her hair in a messy ponytail. She looked up as Marcus came in from the kitchen, carrying a tray with 3 mugs of hot chocolate. He sat down beside her, handing her a mug. Their fingers brushed, a simple, familiar touch that sent a current of warmth through her. "The tower is almost as tall as me," Maya declared proudly. "It's the best tower I've ever seen," Eleanor said, meaning it with every fiber of her being. As she looked at the man she loved and the daughter who was now hers in every way that mattered, Eleanor Vance thought about her old life. She thought of the glass office, the cold logic, the lonely view from the top. She had once believed that success was a fortress you built to keep the world out. Now she knew that true wealth was not a fortress at all. It was a home you built to let the right people in.